The Hogsty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsty.com.
By fans, for fans, the Hog Style. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Welcome back to the Hogsty, DC's unofficial leading source for all things Redskins and the NFL. Sean, Jamal, Alex, and Steve here with you today. Our guest is the owner of Fanspeak.com. He's actually been with us on the show once before, and we're very excited to have him back. He's going to help us navigate the murky waters of the Redskins offseason here. So please put your hands together, give a warm welcome to Mr. Steve Shoup. Steve, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's always fun to talk Redskins and draft.
Yeah. All right. Great.
Yeah. This is the intense time, obviously, of the season. So you are the expert here for us talking about some of this draft stuff that's coming up. Got to ask you right off the bat, kind of a general sort of easy question, but really want to know where you stand on it. Redskins are sitting here at number 13. What do you think the team is going to do in this situation, and what would you do? Is there a difference between those two things?
Well, possibly. I think the way you look at this draft class, sitting at 13, is 12 picks ahead of us, 11 teams, with the Browns having 2 picks right now. And the way I look at it is you have 6 possible landing spots for quarterback. I don't think 6 quarterbacks go ahead of us, but I think it's very likely that it's 4, possibly 5. And, of course, that 5th quarterback would be huge to push down another guy. I mean, we'll see. It might only be 4. I think it's going to be quarterback 1, 2, 3. I'd be really shocked if the Giants go in another direction of them taking a quarterback or trading to a team who would take a quarterback at number 2. So I think it goes quarterback 1, 2, 3, and then it becomes, what do the Broncos do? What do the Bills, if the Bills don't trade with the Giants? And even if they do trade with the Giants, maybe the Giants at 12 take their quarterback. And then I think you have the Dolphins as well. So let's just say it's 4 quarterbacks. I think you then look at it, and there's a lot of other premium talented players, guys like Saquon Barkley, Quentin Nelson, Bradley Chubb. Those will all probably be gone. But you then have the defenders who are probably more of an interest to the Redskins, Raquan Smith, Truman Edmonds, Derwin James, Mika Fitzpatrick. Maybe another edge goes, maybe Denzel Ward. So if the Redskins are sitting there and Vita Vea is on the clock, I do think they'll probably consider taking him. And that's where I'd maybe be a little divergent. I really love Vita Vea. I consider him a top 15 prospect. But the way I look at it is, you're not willing to pay Jonathan Hankins $9 million. Why are you willing to spend a top 15 pick on a guy like Vita Vea who might just be a little bit better than Jonathan Hankins? I don't know if Vita Vea is going to be, like the best 340-pound defensive tackle to ever play the game. Jonathan Hankins, and not just him. I mean, we saw Terry Poe in free agency go for around $8 million a year.
Yeah.
Benny Logan still sitting out there, a very similar type of player, maybe a slightly bit more limited, but still a very good player. And if you're not willing to pay these guys $8-9 million, then why are you paying this guy? Why are you using that high of a draft capital on a guy like Vita Vea, who offers you basically the same thing, and years from now is going to command a $15 million salary, despite not having the Aaron Donald and the Ndamukong Suh, Fletcher Cox impact in the passing game. So that's where I'm kind of diverging on where I think the Redskins might go if the draft board sets up and Vea is sitting there and none of these other elite talents have slid to them.
Well, let's talk about Vea, because first of all, to me, the comp on my head for Vita Vea is Danny Shelton. And I know a lot of Redskins fans are really hot on Danny Shelton at one point in time, but my concern about Vea has always been if we draft an interior defensive lineman that high, I would want him to get a push in pass rush on passing downs, and I'm not sure Vea can really do that. So is my Danny Shelton comp on my head reasonable, and what about Vea as a pass rusher?
I think Shelton is obviously a very interesting comp, same school, same size. And we've seen Shelton be dominant. He's absolutely dominant versus the running game, but it goes back to my point. The Browns were not willing to pay him his 5th-year option of roughly $11 million next year, so they trade him to the Patriots. And, like Vea, I think offers more than Shelton. I think he's a bit more of a complete player, but I don't think he's going to go out there and be a 75% snap guy like you see with some of the top defense tackles, just because at that size it's really hard to do. At Washington last year, Pro Football Focus, I think, had him on the field for about 550 snaps, somewhere in that ballpark. And, that was maybe a little over half for Washington. So, I just think that there's a real question mark there. I think Vea does offer more as a pass rusher than Shelton, but I don't think it's obviously anywhere near the level that we see these top interior defensive linemen who get paid the big money. I mean, we all saw what Fletcher Cox re-signed for with the Eagles a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, Aaron Donald next year is just going to get a blank check from the Rams. And like Vea, the way that the league is, you got to be on the field and you got to, affect the passing game. And I think he's fine when he's on the field versus the passing game, but he's not going to be out there on those money downs. He's not going to be out there in 3rd and 7. He's not going to be out there in 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. Now he does, I think he does offer enough pass rush ability that he's not just a run stopping nose tackle like, say, Sylvester Williams, who the Lions just signed for. He's the type of guy who just can't be on the field when you're throwing or you're playing, a man short. But Vea could be out there maybe on 3rd and 3 because there's a possibility of a run. But, I just probably see him as like a 60% player, and that's good, and that's fine, and there's value there. But that value is, like I said, that's Jonathan Hankins. I mean, Hankins was on the field 63% of the time in 15 games. That's kind of where I boil down to with guys like Vea and Darren Payne. So, how high do you want to draft that guy? I'm not saying they're not necessarily first rounders, but are you taking them that high, top 15? I mean, that's there's
Right.
some premium talent at other positions.
So if you're not necessarily a Vea guy, and it doesn't even sound like you're very much a Payne guy, where are you personally kind of hoping the team would go or thinking the team would go?
Well, I will say this. I would not mind either of those players if you trade back and get them, say, in the 20s.
Sure.
Because, one, that takes away that fifth-year option. There's a split. If you're in the top 16, it's basically like almost like a franchise tag, where if you're in the bottom 16 of the first round, it's much lower. That's why, we see a big gap there between those two salaries when those guys come up with their fifth-year options. So I would definitely take both of those players if they trade back. As it stands now, if you're staying at 13, I'm really hoping one of these guys slides. A Daron James, a Mika Fitzpatrick, Roquan Smith, Terrell Edmonds. Those are the four, plus Quentin Nelson, though I think that's pretty rare, unlikely. Those guys would be the ones who, I think you stand pat, take one of those guys, and just get an elite player added to your defense, or if it's Nelson on the offensive line. If those guys aren't there, then I maybe consider moving back. I mean, there are other talents. I really like Harold Landry, and I'd consider him, but, edge rusher isn't the Redskins' primary need. I think you only take him if you're not re-signing Preston Smith.
Right.
Denzel Ward I like a lot, but, they decided to go with Dunbar and give Moreau a chance and also sign Skandrick. So, yeah, I like him a lot, but it seems like they're going to try corner, maybe see what they got with their young corners this year. I'd maybe add one later in the draft, sure, but I wouldn't, run to the table for Denzel Ward. So if those four or five guys that I mentioned aren't there, I would definitely look to trade back. I mean, hopefully there's something there. If not, then I just take best available at any position and just get the best player I can get.
Awesome.
Steve,
I think one of the big needs on this team obviously is running back. I'm not sure everybody completely agrees with me, but in my mind, there's a great talent, a lack of talent in the Redskins running back group. And there's a lot of great running backs in this draft. I think obviously Barkley. I mean, fans speak as Barkley, up at the top at number 4.
Yeah, although I did a mock yesterday and I got him at 13, which would be almost impossible.
Which would be
If that happened, I would do spin kicks all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Let's not. I hope you don't have to do that because I don't want to look at it. But talk to us a little bit about the top few running backs. I'm personally a big Darius Geis fan. Wouldn't break my heart if they drafted him at 13. I know most people think it's a reach, but talk to us about the running back group in general and what you see in the top few guys.
Well, yeah, I mean Barkley is definitely just a special talent. I think he is that impact running back day one. To have the same level of impact like an Elliott or Todd Gurley.
Sure.
He's complete. He can play in the passing game, do all that. And I like Geis a lot as well. And I think Geis is a first-round running back. But my issue with Geis is kind of the same with Vita Vea. Is are you taking a running back that high, top 15? Not so much from the financial impact because running back contracts, as we see, aren't actually that crazy outside of Le'Veon Bell, who is maybe the one guy who deserves it. I think the bigger concern is twofold. One, they're not full-time players. Again, unless you're Le'Veon Bell, you're not on the field, 80% of the time. And with Chris Thompson, we don't need him to be. And the other part of it is career length. We all remember the Clinton Portis-Champ Bailey trade. Champ Bailey had been in the league, 3-4 years before Clinton Portis entered the league, and he was in the league 4 years after Clinton Portis left the league. Corners and other positions just play so much longer than running backs, and Portis was one of the really good running backs that we've seen. Was he Adrian Peterson? No, but if you look in the last, since 2000, running backs who were drafted, it's got to be top 10, top 15 running back.
Sure.
In that time frame. So, that to me at that high is a little risky. And I know we've seen success with some first-round running backs recently, but the other part of it is this is a deep running back class, and we see plenty of success with second, third, fourth-round running backs. Obviously, last year, Alvin Kamara and Kareem Hunt were both third-rounders. They both outproduced Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey, who were top 10 players. And, even if you flip those teams, you put Kamara on the Panthers or whatnot, they're still probably going to produce more. So, I just think that to push a running back that high in this deep of a class, I just wouldn't do it. I think you're going to have plenty of options at the second round. Not having that third rounder hurts because I think that's definitely a sweet spot area for the running back position in this draft.
Sure.
But some guys could definitely slide to the fourth round as well. So I would probably target more running back in the second round and take another position and get two players. Any running back you take in the second round, Sonny Michael, Nick Chubb, Kerryon Johnson, any of those guys, those should be day one starters and roughly in the same ballpark as Darius Geis.
Mm. So you brought up one guy who I'm really high on, which is Sonny. But another name that, I'm not a big college football watcher, but I look at stats and I kind of use those more to inform my opinions. The kid from North Carolina State, Hines, what round do you think he'll go in? Because I see him as just another Chris Thompson kind of clone, and frankly, I wouldn't mind having two of those on my roster any day. So, am I right about that?
Yeah, no, I think obviously he's a smaller back. He's going to help a lot in the passing game. He does remind you a lot of Chris Thompson for sure. And to bring up your point of having two of those, people would say, oh, you don't need two of those guys or can't have two of those guys. Well, the Patriots have had quite a bit of success with two similar guys like Deion Lewis and James White. So
right.
You can absolutely utilize two of those guys and be effective, and then have Kelly and Pirine as your bigger, more power backs. But I like Hines. I think he's probably a fourth rounder. It's a deep class. He could maybe even slide to the fifth round. But I think fourth round is probably the target area for him.
Okay, and what about Sonny? You think he'll still be there when we pick in the second if they don't go running back in the first round?
Yeah, I think it's likely two running backs go in the first round, Barkley and Geis. I wouldn't be shocked if a third goes at the end of the first round, because you do have some teams there who could use a running back. Early second, we could see a bit of a run on running backs just because the talent is definitely there with guys, like Sonny, Chubb, Kerryon Johnson, Penny, Freeman, whoever, every team's going to have a different valuation of these guys. But, all these teams that we think, for Saquon Barkley, but are probably going to go quarterback or go another direction in the first round, could definitely go running back in the second round. And you have teams like, the Browns had 2 picks, the Colts have 3 picks, 2 before us. If they don't take Barkley at 4 or 6, or the Browns trade back, or who knows what they end up doing,
right?
Then they could definitely look at one of these running backs. So will Michelle be there? That's tough to say, but I think a good running back will still be there for a second round pick.
Okay, last running back question, because there's a lot of draft questions, but I can't let this go. I think the wild card to me is Rashad Penny. Obviously he led the NCAA in rushing, but he played with San Diego State, which is a Mountain West. So I think the real kind of bugaboo question with him is Penny going to be the guy that ends up leading the NFL in rushing too? Or what we saw in him a function of him playing in the Mountain West Conference?
I think there's a little of both. Obviously his numbers were so extreme because he was playing in the Mountain West. But he's a good running back. And at the Senior Bowl, I thought he showed that. Obviously it's a tougher venue for running backs because they don't do full tackling in practice, only in a game. But he showed the ability to be a player on passing downs. He's a good, tough runner. I think he has pretty good vision and finds the hole well. He's got some decent athleticism, some really good athleticism. I like him. I think he can be a good runner. I think right now I look at him as a late second-round guy. If we end up taking him at 44, I would have no issues, assuming, these other guys are off the board ahead of him. But, yeah, I think he can be a player in the NFL for sure.
Okay. Well, let's talk guards. It's not the sexiest position in the world, but I think, on the Redskins, at least, that may be our single biggest hole. Yeah,
hey, and to some people, they might have a fetish where it is the sexy position.
if your name is Adam,
I think we just learned something about Alex.
But talk to us about the guard group. I mean, obviously, I think everybody knows Quentin Nelson is an elite talent, but Will Hernandez is kind of the next guy on the board. Talk to us about some possible guard targets for the Redskins if they choose to fill the hole in the draft, which is looking increasingly likely at this point.
Sure. And first, let me say, I would argue that left guard or center, because you could move Rouillet to guard, is the biggest hole on this team, because right now you look at the other areas like defensive line,
Steve, you're smart because I agree with you 100% on that, by the way.
Exactly. There we go. Defensive line, do they have a true nose? No, but they could rotate guys like McGee.
They have bodies, yeah.
Yeah, they have guys who can play. Same with running back. I mean, Chris Thompson handles a third down role. You get a fourth-round running back, add them to, what we have, and you could have a running back by committee. Add Himes to what we have, what we just talked about. And are you going to be a top 10 running team? No, but you can be okay. At guard, there's no option. I mean, it's Ari Kwanjo, Ty Cantalina. I mean,
right.
People are talking about moving Nasecki there, who's, he's 6'8" and never played it. And we also have both of our starting tackles missing all of OTAs, so he probably should be staying outside. There's no one there. So, this is also one of the best interior line classes I can recall. So why would you not go there? And again, this goes back to missing that third-round pick, because we just have talked about 3 positions that they really need a guy. But it is a fantastic class. I mean, Quentin Nelson is, barring an injury, he should be just like a 10-time All-Pro.
Is he Zach Martin or better?
I think he might be better. And Zach Martin, I like Nelson more than I like Martin coming out, and I like Martin a lot coming out. I loved him. I thought he was a fantastic guard, right tackle prospect, and definitely thought he was a top 15 talent. I like Nelson better. But Martin's obviously gotten to the league and has made himself the best guard in the league, in my opinion. So, Nelson, I think, is going to be challenged, pretty much from day one. But I do think it's unlikely that he's there at 13. Stranger things have happened. John Allen fell to 17 last year, so never say never. But yeah, the rest of this interior class is really, really good. I mean, Will Hernandez is just a mammoth of a man. I mean, he will inflict pain on the defensive line. He's just so big, strong, powerful. Every snap at the Senior Bowl, defensive linemen were just furious with him because he plays through the whistle, and not dirty. I'm not trying to say he's a dirty player. He just plays through the whistle, and he's not going to let go. He's going to just bury you any chance he can get. And I think he's a fantastic prospect. Isaiah Wynn from Georgia, he played left tackle in college. Some teams could look him at tackle. He's a little short for tackle, but he also is at Senior Bowl. I mean, just the ultimate technician. His technique was perfect. He could mirror anyone. He was working inside. He worked a little outside, but mainly worked inside. And, it didn't matter if a defensive lineman was big and strong. It didn't stop him. I mean, he was fantastic. James Daniels is the center from Iowa. I love him. I think he and Billy Price, who did get the pectoral injury at the combine, but everyone's saying it should be fine. And Price could play center guard, and Daniels probably could play guard if you need him, but they're both fantastic centers, and I think they are, really top-tier starting centers in this league within a year or two. So both of those guys are really good. Later in the draft, I think you look at guys like Frank Ragnow, third, fourth round, Mason Cole, probably like third, fourth round. Those guys could play guard, play center, but other really good interior prospects. And then there's a few others later, like late sleepers that I really like as well.
But the guard issue is kind of a strange one for me because there's like a draft placement issue for the Redskins, because we're not going to get Quentin Nelson, and then you've got Isaiah Wynn, Will Hernandez are sort of back of the first round guys, Billy Price maybe middle of the second. But if we're going running back in the second round, where are we going to get what's our realistic target at guard in terms of what the Redskins could get possibly?
Yeah, that's kind of the tough issue for me, because it would be great to obviously trade back and get that third-round pick back or get a late second rounder
right
in return. That would make things a lot easier. But if they're sticking as they are and they go running back in the second, then guard is going to get dicey for the fourth. Maybe you actually have to trade up from the fourth to the third round because – use that extra pick you got from Denver for the Seward Cravens deal, to get up to the end of the third round. Maybe a guy like Frank Ragnow still there. I think Mason Cole might last to the fourth round. I don't think Cole has the upside. I don't think he's going to be a All-Pro or maybe even a Pro Bowl player. I think he's like, a Corey Raymer, like a 8-10 year starter, solid, good player. Not going to win awards, but I think he's like a little better Spencer Long is the way I'd put him. And, I don't, as we see, Spencer Long had value on the market. He signed for $7 million a year. Not going to be, a guy who, I don't think Spencer Long's ever going to a Pro Bowl, but he's going to be a good, decent starter most years of his career that he's healthy. And I think that's Mason Cole. I mean, he played left tackle at Michigan. He played center. He can play guard easy. He's got good size, good physicality, smart. I think coaches are going to love him. I mean, he would be definitely a day one starter because he, I believe, started every game at Michigan at least these last 3 years, if not his entire career. He's probably the most realistic option in the fourth round that I think could actually play this year. But beyond that, the guys you're getting in the fourth round probably aren't helping you this year is the fact of the matter, and that might be why you need to trade up, because you need to get a guy you can plug and play this year.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt. Let's talk quarterbacks. The Redskins aren't really in a position to need a top of the draft quarterback, but I think the class itself is fascinating. So talk to us a little bit about what you see in the top group of sort of first round quarterbacks. All of which you said may go ahead of us. Mayfield, Rosen, Arnold, Allen, possibly Jackson, etc.
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is, and I'll preface this by saying I'm not a big Josh Allen fan. Typically, I don't think he should be drafted until the second and third round. He no doubt has a big arm. No doubt he's a smart kid. He went to the Senior Bowl, did an up and down performance. I think it showed that he's not as good as the people who love him think he is, and he's not as bad as the people who hate him think he is. But at the end of the day, to me, it's not a first-round quarterback, not a top 10 quarterback. Saying all that, I think he goes that high. And I think teams are just desperate. I think teams fall in love with the arm and the size and will just take him and hope that they can develop him. And I think we've seen pretty much every team who needs a quarterback, they've also done a good job of adding quarterbacks this offseason to ensure you don't have to rush a guy. So,
Right.
You know, Browns with Tyrod Taylor and Keith Keenum in Denver, and the Jets re-signing McCown and Bridgewater. So
I like seeing teams go back to that, by the way, just personally.
And I completely agree. I think, you know, there's been too much of a push to just rush these quarterbacks of late, and I think it flames some guys out earlier than they should. And the other thing is, teams last year wanted to do that. You know, the Bears signed Mike Glennon, hoping that he'd be good enough that they didn't need to force him to Trubisky in, but he wasn't. You know, the Texans started the year with Tom Savage at quarterback, and he was just awful.
Right.
And obviously Watson was the most ready to play. And of course the Chiefs, you know, went all year. And they knew that going in, that unless they were out of the playoffs, Mahomes is not really playing. So those are the teams that did that, and, you know, Trubisky showed some stuff at the end. Watson obviously hit the ground running, and Mahomes, Chiefs feel confident enough to trade Alex Smith. So we'll see. It looks like the teams are going to really go for that this year, and I think that's smart. And then the other thing is, a lot of these quarterbacks, outside of Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph, they don't have the same level of experience that quarterbacks maybe used to have coming out of college. I mean, you know, Sam Darnold is a redshirt sophomore. You know, Lamar Jackson started 3 years, but, you know, it's only been like the last year that he's really shown himself as a good passer. You know, his freshman year, pretty much all he did was run. He developed some his sophomore year, and then this past year he really took another step. So, I mean, all these guys should be developing. I think Mayfield is probably the only one who I'd have some confidence level of starting week one. But I do think it's a good class overall. But I think there's more questions than some other top tier quarterback classes. You know, I think with like Winston, Mariota, you maybe had a little bit more confidence than some of these guys, just because each of these guys has an issue. You know, Baker Mayfield's size, I'm not that worried about it. And I definitely don't worry about any of the off-the-field stuff. Josh Rosen has had multiple injuries, which has limited how much time he's played. You know, Lamar Jackson, like I just said, he's developing. Sam Darnold, he didn't have a great redshirt sophomore year. I mean, he's shown flashes. He has the potential, but he's a developmental guy.
He does a lot of dumb things. He does a lot of dumb things.
He makes mistakes. And I mean, he's a 20-year-old, you know, like that's not unexpected. And then Josh Allen, we all know his issues.
He can't hit the broadside of a barn if he's standing next to the barn.
I mean, yeah, his accuracy is scary at times. I mean, down at the Senior Bowl, I was standing there talking to some guys on the sideline in the back of the end zone. They're doing a red zone drill against no defense, and he overthrows a receiver into the stands. You know, it was 5 feet over the receiver's head when he jumped. And, I mean, it should have been just a simple, easy pass, and he rifled it for no particular reason. So, yeah, I mean, the arm is amazing, but what you can actually get out of it is a big question. So those 5 guys have a lot of potential. Even Mason Rudolph is the 6th guy, and I would not be surprised to see Mason Rudolph end up in the end of the first round. Either a team who didn't get a quarterback in the first round trades back up to get him, or one of these teams who we all know, you know, we're coming to a point where a lot of the top quarterbacks are retiring. You know, we saw Romo and Manning retire. We saw Palmer retire. With Brady, Breeze, Roethlisberger, Eli, Rivers, they're all the next to go. You know, I mean, we even know Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, in the next 3-4 years, they're going to be in their late 30s. I mean, Not many quarterbacks play that long. So,
don't ask Doug Williams. He said he thinks Smith will play till 40, but you know.
And I mean, obviously, Brady and Breeze have been the exception, but quarterbacks hit that wall, and sometimes you don't even know it. I mean, remember Brett Favre, his first year with the Vikings, he was like league MVP. Next year, he was terrible.
Yeah.
And we saw the same thing with Peyton. They just lucked into the Super Bowl his last year because of that defense. So,
yeah, you fall off the cliff, you fall off the cliff. It's
exactly.
amazing.
So these teams are going to start looking for their future replacement. So, that's why even if 5 quarterbacks don't go in front of us, and I think that's a little unlikely, though not impossible, I think 6 quarterbacks do end up in this first round just because so many teams need either a quarterback, this year or next, or 3 years from now, and then that 5th-year option has so much extra value at the quarterback position.
Well, folks, sorry about that if that sounded just a little bit abrupt. In live radio and live podcasting, you sometimes have technical snafus, which is what we just had there with the Skype recording, bringing Steve on. So had to let him go a little bit early, but we got at least plenty of good information out of that, lots about the draft, and we'll have him back on the show later. He's at SteveOSpeak on Twitter, by the way, Steve Shoup over at Fanspeak. So anything we want to say about that interview? I mean, there's a lot of really good draft information that he was able to give us before we crashed on him.
Jamal, I'd like to go back to you because I know you were gonna ask him about quarterbacks who are ready to start. I think, right? That was what happened when it went Kaflooey.
Yeah, it was surprising because I remember when Jared Goff came out. The first thing I had said when I saw him was, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, but he seems like he has like a third round grade on for me. And I'm not like a person who does like grades or anything, but watching him play compared to the hype that he had, I was like, I don't really see it because of the fact that, one, he wasn't a guy who would really overcome, his team's situations and their injuries and things like that. So I don't understand how he'd go top 5, but I understood the arm talent, the things that he presents as a professional quarterback was there. So when I heard him speak about Josh Allen, I was kind of thrown back, but then I remember, like, I did the same thing. I don't necessarily think that Josh Allen should be, outside of the first. I mean, he earned a spot in the first round based off his play alone. It's no reason why a Wyoming quarterback, if you think about it, is going in the first round. He earned that. So, I mean, we'll see how it turns out, but that's one of the things that stood out to me is the fact that he didn't really, see that in Josh Allen.
I don't think Josh Allen did earn it personally. I guess you and I have difference of opinion. I think Josh Allen was genetically blessed from your deity of choice with an arm that's Jeff George level arm, just a gun. But the man can't hit the broadside of a barn. It's like Alex. I think he's going to get some GM fired. Is what I think.
I mean, to an extent, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, if you understand his path and how he got to where he got, he didn't even get a scholarship before this. I mean, I don't think he did. I think he had to walk on to Wyoming or something like that. But even still, like his journey to being a professional football player got him to where he's at right now. There's plenty of quarterbacks in a NCAA who has a good arm who still didn't play to the same level as Josh Allen played. And at the same time, we talk about the inaccuracy. That's one thing, but I still seen him at the combine and I think the Senior Bowl and his bowl game put on the show. So we talk about I understand there's more games to look at, but at the same time, he still put on a show with his arm and his accuracy at times. So
I just don't think
it depends on what you want to look at.
I mean, when I look at quarterbacks like these guys, you really, like we were talking about, the fact that all these teams have a veteran in there who can start for the first year is going to help so many of these guys, especially the Josh Allens and Lamar Jacksons, guys who don't have every tool that you want quite yet. Like, you need to sit for a year and learn the playbook and learn to be patient to play in the NFL because, you can't do a one read and run thing in the NFL and survive very long. You have to be able to do all the classic drop back passer stuff.
Well, see, that's where you bring up Lamar Jackson. I think if Lamar Jackson actually gone back to school for another year, he'd be a top 5 pick.
You're probably right.
I watched him last year, and I was very unimpressed. In his Heisman, year. Mm-hmm. He didn't impress me as a passer. I think he was sort of a one read and go guy. But if you look at it, what he's done this year,
he's improved. I agree.
He's improved a lot. He keeps his eyes up. He knows how to move around within the pocket. He doesn't scramble just to scramble really anymore. It looked like a lot of those runs were called runs. I think Lamar Jackson is a kid who, if he goes to the right team with the right quarterback coach and they have a patient enough front office, he's going to be a star. I think that kid is going to be a star
Right.
because I think he can be better than Michael Vick.
And I completely agree with you,
well.
but he's a guy who probably needs to sit for a year, just like Allen. Probably just like it wouldn't hurt Rosen or Darnold to sit. I mean,
Bob Petrino has done wonders with Lamar Jackson. No, Josh Rosen, he's my pick for number one. I think Josh Rosen is by far the most pro-ready. If you just watch his tape, he looks much more like an NFL quarterback to me. I watched a lot of Sam Darnold, and the guy, I mean, he's straight out of Central Casting and everything. I mean, I get it. But he does a lot of dumb things on the field. He does some things that makes you wonder, just, dude, what are you thinking? Why on earth did you make that throw?
Right.
I mean, I think Darnold is another guy who Steve Shoup mentioned it. He's only 20 years old. He would have been better served to go back too, I think. So there's that. But I think we got to move on to more Redskin stuff first.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Why don't we go ahead and do that? We've got a user poll this week. We didn't have one last week, so maybe this is a good time potentially to do the user poll. Return to the user poll.
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, the lack of a user poll last week is because I forgot. So I remembered it like I remembered it like halfway through the morning on Thursday. I thought, oh, you know what, we're just gonna skip it. But we came up with a good one this week though, and solid double. I'd say line drive double on this one. Awesome. The question was, the Redskins' pursuit of Jonathan Hankins seems to have slowed. What do you think the team should do about Hankins at this point? And the four choices, we always have four choices, are make every effort to sign, just focus on defensive tackles in the draft, sign and also draft a defensive tackle, or neither because we're okay on the defensive line. So let's talk about, as always, what we think the public would think and our personal opinions about this. So let's start with Jamal this time. Jamal, what do you think about the poll?
I think the fans went for sign Hankins. I think second would be to look forward in the draft. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, mainly, personally, I feel like I think we should just focus in the draft. Even though Hankins would cut out a big necessity of going after a defensive lineman in the early rounds. But, I mean, we'll see.
Okay, let's tell you what. Let's go to Alex next. How about that?
Okay.
I made Sean go first last week.
Well, I wasn't here last week, so. And I thought you said there was no poll last week. I'm very confused now.
Oh, the week before. The last poll we did. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to say the fans said do both because that seems very fanish to say draft somebody and sign somebody elite. That's how our fans are, especially the guys who we read comments from. In terms of what I think, I tend to say just focus on the draft. I don't even think it. To me, of those big three priorities, it's number 3. It's behind guard and running back at this point. So I'm not even making it a strong focus in the draft at this point, personally.
All right. Reasonable opinion. Sean?
I'm sorry. Can you give me just one more time, run through the options again so I get the wording?
Okay. Make every effort to sign.
Got it.
Just focus on defensive tackles in the draft. Sign Hankins and also draft a defensive tackle, or neither. Both. Or neither were okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man. I'm going to say the fans said make every effort to sign. Mm-hmm. I really don't know, though. I'm not super confident on that, but that's what I'm going to guess. And the reasoning behind that is, besides the obvious marquee acquisition of Alex Smith, I think our fans are used to, lots of acquisitions, expensive contracts.
Big names. Yeah, we still love it. Here. We say we hate it, but we love it.
We're a shameless addict, is really what we are. So I'm going to go with that. My personal opinion, I'm not terribly concerned. I'm kind of with Alex in that I would rank this much further below other needs. So I'm not really concerned with signing him, and I'm definitely not really concerned with drafting one high in the draft or anything. I'm gonna say I don't love the wording, but the final option, which was do neither.
Okay, well, sounds good. Yeah, I definitely think our fans are I mean, analogy I think is the crazy ex-girlfriend. It's like it's somebody you need to get away from, but you just can't quit her. And that is the Redskins fans in signing big name players.
Yep.
They know it's not the right thing, but they just can't let it go. We're too used to seeing the Albert Hainsworths of the world come in. Well, it turns out Sean and Jamal were right.
Hey.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was
Jamal, you're always right. Shut up. You don't get to.
That's
you don't
because
get to
Jamal
celebrate
cheats.
that.
That's because Jamal cheats.
I stopped doing the poll a long time ago. Just to avoid.
He just did it early to make himself look good.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, by a vote of 50%, the public voted for make every effort to sign. In second place was sign and also draft a defensive tackle because, of course, that was 31%. 17% voted for just focus on defensive tackles in the draft, and a mere 2% voted for neither.
Wow.
So, Sean, you were in the 2% category.
Hey-o.
Yeah, personally, for me, it's
And
just
proud
focus.
of it, Steve. Proud.
I would have voted for the just focus on defensive tackles in the draft. I agree with. I know Alex said it. I think Alex and Sean, you guys both said it. I'm not that worried about defensive tackle. I think, and we've gotten a ton of Twitter inputs and comments on the site. People are absolutely in a panic, like that Titanic is sinking kind of level of panic about defensive tackle. I think people forget that Jonathan Allen is coming back. And Jonathan Allen made a big difference when he was in there.
People act like Allen and Ioannidis are terrible all of a sudden.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God, it's a tragedy. It's not that I wouldn't mind having Hankins, for sure, but I don't think they ought to break the bank for him. So let's do a couple comments and then we'll move on just to give a good sense of things here. We'll go with Jeffrey Bachner, who is at J.A. Bach. He writes, seems like market is speaking to him. Reasonable contract only. Skins only in base 30% of the time. Is he a 3-down lineman? So that's a good question. We will go with.
Can I actually say something about the whole?
Yep.
Oh, we're only in the base. Yeah, if you're only in it the base 30% of the time, that means, and if you don't have that guy, then 1 out of every 3 downs, you're in the wrong. You're out of position.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think Hankins is slightly more versatile than a guy who's just a nose tackle too. So.
But it's the whole poo-pooing nose tackles thing. You still need one, even if you don't think it's important. You need one because they're gonna. If they're not there, then you're out. Then you're not playing the correct guys for
Alex,
1 out of every
have
3 downs.
About this on and off air,
right?
And my thought on it always is, I think the coaching staff and Jay Gruden in particular wants versatile linemen. I don't think they want to burn a roster spot on a guy who's only going to get 10 snaps a game. I just think that's where the Redskins are going with it. But let's finish out the comments because we need to move on here. I mainly just like this guy's name. So that's why we're going to go with this comment. His Twitter name is Free Agent Shopping at Big Lots.
Nice. Hey, there's nothing wrong with Big Lots. I love Big Lots.
I think he's implying that we're doing it on the cheap.
Yeah, I understand that, but Big Lots is awesome. So stop knocking.
I've never been there, actually. Stop knocking, whoever you are. And his at name is at McRedskins. So whoever you are, Alex is offended that you knocked Big Lots. His comment is, I want our defense to improve by all means necessary. If we sign Hankins, that means we can go in a different direction at 13. I know we need D-line help, but what if we don't sign Hankins and we have to choose between Vea or James at 13? His point, it's a long comment. His point with the comment was we probably need one, but not both. And so, I mean, that's reasonable. Yeah. Right. And last one is Marian Hyman, Hyman, at Marian_H. He writes, man, if we can get Hankins to anchor this line, we're free to take a running back or safety or linebacker without hesitation. We currently have a void at interior defensive line, in his opinion. So that is the comments in the poll for this week. Thank you to everybody who participates as always. We will be back with another one as soon as I can think of one.
Beautiful. But we're making no promises about when that might be, so don't get your hopes up.
There's a lot of empty space in my head, so.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for everybody obviously responding as you always do. You're the best. Let's move on, and we should probably discuss at least really briefly Sua Cravens and the departure of the aforementioned. Look, I'm just going to jump right out and say, see ya. Wouldn't want to be ya.
See ya, Sua.
Not a big fan of you.
Well, you're going to see him soon, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He said it to my neck of the woods. That's right. So obviously, kind of an up and down. It's just sort of a weird situation with the team, in his tenure here. But it is officially over. I got a buddy that thinks this departure means we're going to target some sort of safety in the draft higher, like Derwin James or something. I don't know. What do you guys think about this whole departure, and do you think this impacts what the team is going to do for the rest of the offseason?
I don't think it impacts that because I think they're high on Nicholson, and so I'm not. I don't think the team sees safety as a priority. I think they got what they could out of this guy. Like he was, they didn't want him here. And getting a 5th round and moving up in some other spots, that's at least something. I would have kept him around longer, but I'm not upset about it either way.
Here's a quote that has led me to be extremely irritated at Sua, to put it nicely. This is a quote from a local Denver beat writer. I'm going to butcher your name. I'm sorry, ma'am, for butchering your name, but her name is Nikki Havavala, something like that. And she quoted him as saying, "I wanted to play football where somebody wanted me. I can tell that Denver actually wanted me on their team. It wasn't just, this is smart for our team." Well, you know what, Sua? Here's my thought. You are the one who quit on the Redskins.
Exactly.
You are the one who quit on your teammates. You were the one who got another player cut because you decided to quit the day of final cuts after they had already made the final cut. So there's a man out there on the street who was cut by the Washington Redskins because they thought you were going to play. So you cost somebody a job. You quit on the team. You're a flake. You quit on USC. You didn't come back. You were the one who didn't come back when you should have from injury as a rookie. So as far as I'm concerned, Sua, goodbye, good riddance. Screw you. Hope you never come back. See, you wouldn't want to be you. And also, the other thing, by the way, I'm sorry, Jamal, but other thing, the man wasn't that good in the first place. I didn't like draft. If you go back to our draft show in 2016, I wasn't high on Sua anyway because I think he's a tweener. He's not fast enough to be a safety. He doesn't hit hard enough. He's not strong enough to be a linebacker. I wasn't too wild about him in the first place, so I'm glad he's gone and screw him.
I was gonna say I don't think it impacts their draft. One way or another, because what they were doing anyway, they were going to trade him. They knew he wasn't going to be a part of their plan. So I technically agree with Alex, but just for a different reason. Because even if I disagree for a fact that they're settled at safety with Monte, but you can always add another versatile player who can play multiple positions in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
So if they wanted Minkah Fitzpatrick or Derwin James, anybody that's there at 13 that can possibly fit that role, or not even just 13, but somebody later in the draft that can fit that role as a versatile person in the secondary. They can very well go down that route, but obviously Monte will be that number one safety.
Sure.
So and that's basically why I feel like it won't impact their decision, because they probably was already they already knew Sewell wasn't going to be on the roster. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if they found somebody there at that point, then they'll definitely take it. But just one quick thing too to add to add
to all our hate
to my hateful rant.
Yeah, I don't look. I understand you said what you said, so I'm not going to get into that. But what I'll just add to the fact that it's kind of funny because I think yesterday was Friday. I was just listening to ESPN podcast with Chris Cooley and Kevin.
980.
980. So it's kind of funny because I didn't think nothing of it before this happened. But Cooley was like, "Yeah, man, it kind of felt like Sua Cravens wanted the Redskins to beg him to come back, and they just wouldn't budge. And just to make it, and this is before that quote came out, Steve." And he wanted them to beg him to come back, and they just wouldn't budge. And they're not going to be the type of people to do that. So if you want to play, you're going to come back and play. But we're not going to beg you to come back and play. That's not in us. So when I saw that quote last night, I was like, what? That's either coincidence or he heard that from somebody, and that's basically the angle that Sewell was playing. Like he wanted them to beg him to come back, so he'll just be like, "All right, I'll come back for you guys and play for you."
Sure.
It's not going to be like that. And Sewell. I mean, he's a weird guy, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sewell wore number 36, which is an important number.
Yeah.
Yeah. He picked the number. I think he disgraced the memory of the legacy and memory of Sean Taylor. So I'm glad he's gone.
He was definitely not a football tough guy, that's for sure.
I think Denver's going to regret it, and at some point he's going to quit on the Broncos too, because he's quit on his last 2 teams. So it's going to happen again. But let's talk about something better. I'm tired of Sua Cravens.
All right.
Right on. Well, we got a couple other things that we could potentially talk about. Pernell McPhee, obviously, another acquisition that's happened. We had this news. Mark Rypien's in the news. So how do you guys want to prioritize this? You want to talk about McPhee first, perhaps?
I think we got to go Brucey.
Oh, Bruce.
Yeah, that's
yes,
true.
he's
Bruce
had some
Allen
quotes.
did his round of interviews, I guess, at what was it? It's the coaching
the
and
owners' meetings.
Yeah,
No, it's
owners
the owners'
meetings
meeting.
and things like that. Bruce, it seems like he did an interview with every local reporter, every network he could get to. Bruce says the same things regardless who he's talking to. And there were 2 things that he mentioned, one that stuck out to me, and then the one that's making kind of the headlines locally. And so I'm going to give you the thing that stuck out to me the most was, I think it was JP Finley of CSN asked him about trading back and what the Skins kind of, how they operate when they decide to trade back. And I thought it was interesting. He basically said whenever the Skins get on the board, they look at how many players they have left graded the same. Like let's say the top 4 guys left all have an A grade, and they won't want to trade back further than what's left. So I thought that was kind of interesting kind of way of looking at trades in the draft. I didn't know if you guys had picked up on that, or if you had any opinions on kind of that mentality.
Yeah, I saw it. I mean, I don't know if that's too different than what any other team does.
Yeah, I don't know that either offhand.
I think Bruce was alluding to the fact that they'd pay attention to both how the players are graded kind of in raw form and what they need.
Right.
I think the team sort of pays attention to both, which isn't surprising.
He's talked about Redskin grade before as a thing, I believe.
Right, exactly.
We grade him a curve.
And he said something about team needs and stuff in there.
Yeah.
So
he's a
I think
BPA
the
appealing guy, like all of us.
Yeah, he is. What stuck out in my head about the Bruce interview is that he continues to sort of marginalize Cousins on the way out the door.
Well, that's Bruce in a nutshell.
That's Bruce in a nutshell. That's the Redskins in a nutshell. I don't want to, Cousins is gone, but it's funny to me how the Redskins bungled the whole thing, and then because he's gone, they've got to kick him out. Yeah, the Redskins have a history of doing that to a lot of people.
Yeah,
they did it to Scott McLuhan. There's a whole line of people who've gotten kicked in the rear end by the Redskins.
I mean, you go back to Donovan McNabb. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we could go back pre-Bruce and look at it. Like, it would actually be a bit harder because social media wasn't what it was. But it's clearly something that's been common for the past decade now.
And the other thing about it, the last thing is he mentioned the stadium and said they're making progress. And I think it was JP that asked him, okay, should we see it? Are we going to see an announcement, in like the next few months?
And he said not in the next few months. But
it's too early for that.
Yeah, it's way too early for that. All right, so there's one other thing he mentioned that I wanted to bring up because this has kind of made the headlines locally. When they asked him about Alex Smith, he kept on talking about Alex Smith's number of wins in the last 5 years, I think it was. And he said wins and losses is the most important statistic when it comes to equipment manager, team president, quarterback, running back, guard, or even a coach. And he was basically saying that
blame the equipment manager. I agree.
Yeah. First off, I don't know how you put wins and losses on the equipment manager.
If you're the Patriots, you can.
Yeah.
Oh,
well done.
Patriots burn.
And but so a lot of people seem very upset about this idea that you're just using wins and losses as a metric for quarterbacks, though, which I find an interesting discussion on a broader sense, that you're not using advanced stats and things like that. I just wanted your guys' opinions on that if you had any.
I mean, you want winners, right? I mean, it's not a complete evaluation, and there's a lot of things to look at for sure. But you don't want to bring a quarterback in there who has had 8 losing seasons in a row and go, well, you know what, his the advanced metric, shows that he's 8.2, wins above replacement.
Sure.
Although he's had he may be 5-42. I mean, you want winners, and I think his point generally is that Alex Smith has won a lot of games in every place he's been, and so you want to bring a guy in who has a winning attitude, and I think that's what I got out of what he was saying.
This is the kind of thing you say when you have a history of saying things like, well, we're winning off the field. When you have a history of saying that kind of thing, you just break it down real simple. We got to win, because he's not actually the greatest at explaining his strategy or his vision for things. So he's just talking. He's just talking basic stuff. It's just babble. I wouldn't get into it.
But here's my issue with it. If you're going to say wins and losses are what matters, I go back to Sonny Jurgensen. And Sonny Jurgensen's record with the Redskins was 51 wins and 50 losses or something like that. He has a 500 career record. Roughly. Are you saying he wasn't really worthy of the Hall of Fame in the end? I mean,
you're reading too much into it. Jamal and Sean are right. I mean, this is Bruce just talking, and he's just saying, yeah, we want winners, and that's all he means. It's not a slam against Sonny. This is not like deep thoughts by Bruce Allen here.
I don't know if there was a deep thoughts by Bruce Allen.
Yeah, that might. I don't want to.
He may have a lot of deep thoughts about the different types of whiskeys. That would be my guess.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, or colored pants, but this I think has just very little substance.
I think we found our show title.
Whiskeys and colored pants.
Yeah, whiskey and colored pants.
Beautiful. Okay, well, we have a couple other things. You guys want to wrap this one up with just a quick discussion of Pernell McPhee and maybe some Mark Rypien back in the news?
Pernell McPhee. He is an outside linebacker. He is a member of the team.
All right.
That's about as far as I go. He's an average player. He's had some success. He is not a speed rusher. This is a Trent Murphy kind of bigger power rusher clone. That's what McPhee is. He's going to be a rotational guy. It doesn't solve the need for speed off the edge. It solves the need for depth.
Right. Yeah. It's a good depth thing. I actually like power guys more than speed guys, but I'm probably in the minority on that, especially when it comes to the fan base. But I mean, he's a big guy too. He's almost 280.
Yeah, so, almost.
Yeah, he's more like a traditional defensive end in a 3 or a 4-3 size wise.
Jamal, give us some intelligent thoughts about McPhee.
Well, I liked him, and I actually tweeted this when he officially signed. I would have preferred the pre-Chicago McPhee.
Right.
And this actually isn't like, because what he did in Chicago was really good. Just the fact that he was hampered by injuries. I would prefer the pre-Chicago one simply because he was younger. At 28, I think, or 29 years old, I would have just, I just would have wished we had him at a younger age, because if he stayed here for multiple years, it would be a great deal. For him to be here at 1 year, I think at 29 years old, it's just a little frustrating, because he could have paid dividends early and often if he was here younger. But as far as the player, he does have some change-ups. He is a strong person, a strong pass rusher who can get to the backfield pretty consistently. But I don't think there's nothing wrong with McPhee as a rotational guy. Even if he doesn't have the speed, because he knows how to he has moves to get to the backfield. So I appreciate that out of a pass rusher. It doesn't even, like, for example, Trent Murphy, he didn't really wow you with speed, but he did have pass rush moves in 2016.
Yeah.
And you're just wondering, like, how is he our best pass rusher? I mean, it's easy, because he worked on his craft. His hand, that's really what it really comes down to. You have good hands, anticipation. That's one of the biggest factors as a pass rusher, because the first thing an offensive lineman is going to do is try to, put his hands up as well. So if you could get past that and have a good initial move, you should be all right. And that's exactly what McPhee does. And he also has the strength. So it works both ways. He's not like a great pass rusher, but at the same time, he's consistent.
He's a good rotational piece.
Yeah.
So if he's healthy, he'll be fine.
And we're talking about a $1.8 million contract here. So this is not, something that's.
And that reflects his injury history, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
And I think he's gotten 4 sacks a year the last 2 years. So for a depth guy, if he does that again, that'll be great.
And,
I mean,
and the thing,
I think we need some speed off the edge still, because I think that's just always a valuable skill. But go ahead, Jamal. Sorry.
no, we were just about to say the same thing. And I think what McPhee brings does not necessarily, ease uh the ability to, get another pass rusher. We can still get that. And we can still go for a guy who can bring speed off the edge. But I mean, at the same time, again, if we were to get a secondary player like Micah Fitzpatrick, Alex, if we were to get him,
Sure.
It doesn't really matter if we have good rotational players at the edge already. If you have good blitzers as well, that's another thing that you really don't have to worry about if you have solid edge pass rushers already.
Mm-hmm.
You get good edge blitzers, you'll do just fine as well. And that's the speed element that comes to a defense as well. But I do agree, like if we're not going that route, you still need a speed rusher.
And listen, I think we need a pass rush in the interior more than edge right now anyway. I mean, they need to push up the middle of the pocket desperately. And that's why I asked Steve Shoup about Vita Vea, because I don't think Vea really is that guy. And that's really what they need, to me.
You say you don't think he's that guy?
No. I think he may be able to bring some pressure, but I don't think he's going to be the type to really move the pocket in passing downs. No, I think his history, he looks to me like a elite run stopper. I wouldn't mind Vea on the team. If I'm going to draft a guy in the upper middle portion of the first round, I'd want him to have both, and I'm not sure he's going to be that at an NFL level, because he's a bull rush guy. You can't just bull rush, everybody in the NFL. To get a pass
rush. He's kind of finesse for his size though, and I don't know how much that says to him, but I do think he is a person who has that capability, because he has a great motor. He's a guy who can play all three downs. So there is a guy I'm not really worried about, especially we have Jonathan Allen. Allen and
Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Ioannidis.
That's all right.
Yeah, I'm thinking it don't even matter. But if we have Ioannidis and Jonathan Allen healthy, that's really no concern for Vita Vea, because he's going to have endless opportunity to make plays in the backfield as a pass rusher. So that's something I'm not worried about.
And the other thing is, it just something, the feeling in my gut says the Redskins aren't going to draft a guy the size and shape of Vea in the first round. I may be wrong, but they don't have a history of it. They passed on Danny Shelton, a couple years ago, when a lot of people thought they'd draft him.
Yeah.
I just have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to do something unexpected.
I'm with you on that. I have no clue what we're doing in the draft. Like last year was kind of predictable.
Wouldn't surprise me if they drafted guys.
Yeah, I'm about to say we knew what we needed last year. We needed defensive line. I mean, we still do technically, but last year it was even more obvious than it is now.
Yeah, this is kind of a wild card first round for me.
That's a good thing. We're in a good spot, though.
It wouldn't surprise me if they went running back, honestly.
I mean, let's be honest, guys. How many times have you done a mock draft that has been anywhere close to right? Like, for me, it's zero.
Never.
It's absolutely zero. I mean, something always happens.
When we picked Trent Williams, I think we all kind of knew that was happening.
And actually, now that I say it, I think everyone predicted Scherf too, as well.
Yeah.
A couple years ago.
Well, that was pretty obvious. But also, for those of you who don't know, Alex does 500 mock drafts.
So he's always going to be right.
But back when we picked Trent Williams, mock drafts didn't exist. That was more just people saying we should get Trent Williams.
It was either him or Russell Okung, and
yeah.
And I think everybody sort of guessed Trent.
But I think Okung. That one was obvious. Obviously, 2012, we all kind of knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we knew months ahead because they traded up.
The years when we're in the top 5, we kind of know.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe to wrap it up, let's just discuss really quickly this kind of a downer, actually, now that I think about it to end on, but worth bringing up. Mark Rypien, former Redskins quarterback, obviously, in the news again with the sad news that he is suffering from CTE. That's chronic traumatic encephalopathy. For those of you who didn't know, basically injuries and bruising around the brain region.
If you are a football fan and you don't know what CTE is by now, like there's something wrong with you.
You may have
watch the Will Smith movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great movie. Very obviously sad subject matter, and even sadder when it hits close to home, like it is, for us with a very prominent player like Mark. So, other things in this article, he's sort of had a history with depression, and with the CTE exacerbating that, this culminated in a suicide attempt. So, obviously, first, major prayers and thoughts to Mr. Rypien. I mean, you wouldn't wish that on anybody.
No.
What do you guys think when you hear this? I mean, how does this kind of thing hit you?
Can I just say off the bat? I mean, I have family members who they had histories of depression. It is not, it is not something to take lightly. I would just encourage anybody who listens, or if you think you have something, there's nothing wrong going to a therapist, talking about it, trying to figure that stuff out. Get on medication if you need it, because
great advice.
It's better than trying to take your own life.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I was shocked by this story. I had no idea that Mark Rypien's going through this. To me, he's a hero.
Yeah, me too. Boyhood hero.
Your heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't expect your heroes to go through that, and I think I applaud him for being that open. Hopefully, his words can help somebody else out there. I mean, because if you didn't read this article, I mean, his wife found him immediately after he had swallowed 150 Advil pills and an entire bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And his wife induced vomiting to get the pills out of him, and that's the only reason he's alive, is because of that. And he left the other thing in there. He left a 20-minute suicide message, audio message for his wife, and then turned his phone off after that. It's just horrific and awful. Yeah. And I hope that what his words and his interview can help somebody out there.
Yeah, and CTE is one of those things. You can't regulate your moods. You can't kind of organize your thoughts. If you're someone with a history of depression, that's really going to be a dangerous combination of things.
Yeah,
so
or bipolar or whatever else. There's all sorts of things that could be that I would say would be a terrible combination with that.
Absolutely. I mean, we've just got to do a better job of taking care of these guys. Sorry, Jamal. I don't know if I cut you off there. It seemed like I did.
Oh no. I was just saying, just from a perspective of a black male, these type of things. I understand just in general. Obviously, we're trying to wrap it up, so I'll be quick. But just in general, like we don't really that we try to press the issue nowadays to try and get people to speak about if you feel like something's going on with you, to speak up and try and get these issues to the forefront to find out what's going on with you. And then for people who are family members of these people, if you feel like something's going on with somebody, don't just ignore it and say, "Oh, this person's crazy." That's just him or that's just her. Figure out what's going on, because there may be mental issues. So that's all I was saying from our perspective. Sometimes we tend to push these things in the back burner and just accept these people for who they are because they're family members, but that's just them. Just saying, if there's issues going on with us, we've been trying to push it to the forefront to make sure that these issues are resolved as quick as possible from professionals. So that's what that is, and it's unfortunate. I didn't even know about Mark Rypien.
Hey Jamal, I mean, you preface your comments by saying, from the perspective of a black male, is there something in the African American community that is unique to that group of people, about suicide and depression?
No, not necessarily, but I can't really because I mean, suicide is something obviously that's going on in your mental, but I can't necessarily speak for other races because I'm a black male. That's just something that I'm not too keen on when it comes to other races, but when it comes to us, I just know the issues that's going on. I don't know if it speaks out more than other races or anything like that. I'm not sure, but I'm just speaking from my perspective as a person who is a black male. So I don't know. I really don't know, but I just I mean, Alex, if you can answer, go ahead. But
just because I've focused on this a lot in my personal life and studying data, it is actually African Americans historically have been lower when it comes to suicide, but they are the fastest growing group now in terms of the percentages of especially young people, where
catching up with
it's like it's kind of catching up with what other races have happened. So it is a growing issue in the African American community, statistically speaking.
I got you.
And on that cheery note.
Yeah.
Well,
listen to the hot side.
Yeah, you know what, Steve, though? I was going to say, I actually like the message that we're kind of ending on, what Jamal said, which is that if you're dealing with something, come forward, talk to somebody. And if you are a loved one and you see someone going through this, say something to them and come forward. I mean, people need help. And when they're dealing with something like CTE, they just really can't do it themselves. So you got to help them out. That's not a bad way to end it. A little bit of a downer subject, but it is totally relevant to today. So I actually kind of like that. Anything else going on, guys, we want to call out before we let people get back to their lives?
Nope.
No, I don't think so. It's
Happy Cherry Blossom Festival.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, Happy Cherry Blossom. Is that going on right now?
Yeah, there's like 3 trees. It's terrible.
Oh, sad festival this year. All right. Well, we'll let you all get back to it. This has been the Hogstide. Keep checking back on thehogstide.com. Check out our friends at ticketclub.com. We'll see you later. So long.
Peace.